Hi, and welcome to the Future Worlds podcast. I'm Iles, and I'm joined today with Director of Future Worlds, Ben Clark. We've got a special edition on our Silicon Valley trip today. So we take our cohort out to Silicon Valley every year, and we're going to be talking about our experiences out there and some of the questions that we get asked. So Ben, what is Silicon Valley?
So Silicon Valley, loads of people have heard of it. It is the epicenter of startup culture and ecosystems in the world. It is the original kind of home of startups. It is the area around San Francisco, the Bay Area, down to San Jose and further down south in California on the west coast of the US. And it is known as this incredible place where so many of the world famous startups have been launched, like Google and Facebook and Airbnb and Stripe and so many others. But it started years earlier, and it is an ecosystem that has grown around the exceptionally talented engineers, electronics and computer scientists that have gathered in that area, largely gathered around the universities, Stanford and UC Berkeley, that are based there. And they spawned this great number of people who took their engineering skills and applied it to real world problems and started building companies from there. HP, so Hewlett and Packard, were students at Stanford, encouraged by Frederick Terman, who was the Dean of Engineering at Stanford, and he encouraged them to stick around in the Bay Area rather than go back to the East Coast and join an established company. And that's often seen as the genesis of Silicon Valley. When we're there, we visit the garage where they first started, somewhat pay homage to all that has come off the back of that. But yeah, that is Silicon Valley. It is this incredible place. I mean, you've been a few times, obviously, as part of the Future Worlds cohort and before then. I mean, what's your experience of going to Silicon Valley?
I think it can be a bit of a culture shock, actually. It's quite different to the UK, but everything's very big and exciting, and there's a real can-do attitude. I think it's around the mentality that people have out there. Everyone you meet has a startup, and everyone's had lots of startups. Probably most of them failed, but that's totally fine. It's sort of this keep going, get up and go again. And why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Whereas here, I think it can be a little bit more risk averse, because it's scary to think about giving up your day job, to gamble it all away on some tech that you don't know if it works. But I think that's really what it's about. And there's a lot of giving back out there. So, we meet with people and they're all very happy to help the next generation of startup founders, even though they're very busy people. And I think that's really nice environment that it's created, where you can go out there and basically anything's possible.
That whole kind of why not instead of why is so critical, isn't it? And it's easy to say, but actually when you start experiencing it and kind of looking people in the eye and they're genuinely saying, why not? Why would you not try and go for this kind of global scale? Why are you not thinking bigger? Why are you not trying to do something that is incredibly high risk, that's never been done before, that most people are writing you off for, saying you're completely nuts? It's not until you experience that directly that it sort of, for me, the penny drops, doesn't it? That you're thinking, yeah, this isn't just a hypothetical, oh yeah, maybe you could do this. This is an expectation that you will do that, you will try, you will go on this kind of great adventure.
So we've been taking the cohort out to Silicon Valley and San Francisco for the last few years. Why did Future Worlds decide that was the place to go?
I mean, on one level, the obvious question, why wouldn't you want to go to this incredible place that has such a heritage of launching incredible startups that have achieved this kind of global scale, like a Google? The why not question is an obvious starting point. Why wouldn't you want to go there? But at its heart, we talk about mindset, and it's easy sort of theoretically to talk about mindset difference and having a growth mindset, having this kind of optimism and ambition. But what I've always experienced whenever I've been in the Valley is this incredible mindset that is intoxicating in its scale of enthusiasm and energy and expectation that great things can and will happen. And you can talk about it in theory, but until you really experience it, the penny doesn't fully drop. And so the starting point for me is it's so important that people here on campus can experience it directly, that they have access to this network of people who have been there in the Valley, have succeeded multiple times, know what it's like to start with just an idea and then turn it into a multi-100 million, billion-dollar business. And they can then share their experience, and interacting with those people can make an enormous difference to the trajectory of the startup founders we're supporting here. And so the first point is that mindset and that understanding, seeing what's possible. But part of that is then about platform. So we're giving these startup founders a platform on the world stage. So if you're going to the very heart of startup ecosystems globally, you're going to the place that is most competitive, where some of the best talent and the best startups exist. And if you can stand on that platform and see that you stand shoulder to shoulder with the best in the world, well, that gives you an immense boost of confidence. It shows you that you can do this. And, we see time and time again on campus brilliantly talented people doing incredible things, who often understate how incredible they are, who perhaps understate quite what's possible, and maybe don't believe in themselves, don't believe in the tech that they have. Exposing them to the valley and seeing that they are every bit as good, often so much better, and getting a response from a network who's saying, wow, this is incredible. Well, that is incredible for those founders, and they get connections that can open up vast opportunity. The US is the largest homogenous market in the world, and having access to that. I've been there before where you just scale so much more quickly in that market. We had a small team in the startup that I was part of leading here in the UK, and a small team in the US, and we were growing twice as quickly in the US, just because the deal sizes were bigger, the speed at which people were willing to interact was that much quicker. And so giving people a platform there is immensely powerful, and then giving them access to that network that can be so transformational. So all of those things, that combination of things, makes the trip so potentially life-changing for the people who go. So Alice, for people who have never been, what does the week look like?
It was an action-packed week. It was so full of things, so you have to bear with me if I can't remember everything off the top of my head. There was a founders run. We spent the day in the city. We went down to Workwise and we met with the founder of Workwise. That was a great opportunity to have a few guest speakers come in, and they were listening to the startups pitch. We spoke to Maciek there, who's alumni from ECS, who's now moved out there permanently to Silicon Valley because of the experience he had out there. We went to UC Berkeley. And that was amazing, the opportunities they have at the university there. So they also do a big ideas competition, a little bit like we do in Southampton, but I think it's a little bit bigger scale than, I think you were talking to the guy that runs it.
The guy leads it, and he's just rattling off the numbers. They've had 10,000 students that they've worked with through that competition over the last 10 years. They've had one unicorn that's been launched through that. The startups have raised over $1 billion of funding off the back of going through that experience. It's like just the scale and the impact that it's achieving is a real inspiration for what we're trying to build.
Yeah, because they also have Skydeck, which is their accelerator program, sort of links to the university. So they get a lot of startups coming through that. And I think students are really encouraged to have startups.
And again, it's like Skydeck. They do what we do, right? They do a demo day, but they have 800 Silicon Valley VCs in that demo day. They're expecting to be raising investment of sort of $2 to $5 million off the back of that. More than $10 million valuations. That's just the baseline expectation, which really frames kind of expectation, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a different level out there, because we also went to Plug and Play, which is another accelerator. They run things a little bit differently. And Sarah Dean's another alumni from ECS, so she came to meet us there and ran a session, a little bit energizer, get the startups pumped up for their pitches on Thursday at the pitch mixer, where we had quite a lot of investors, some alumni, and other people from the ecosystem that wanted to come and meet us. So we made some new friends there, which is always a really good experience. And the day at Google with Freddie, another alumni, on Friday. It's actually quite impressive to see the number of alumni that have gone from Southampton and are actually now still in Silicon Valley working either in these big corporates or they have their own startups and have made incredibly impressive careers out of it. There was also the Department for Business and Trade came and met us, Jacqueline. So she's been to our demo days, been quite involved trying to see how we can help link up the UK with Silicon Valley and all the activity happening across those places. We went to Uncork Capital and met Trip. This was a really interesting experience because he was really impressed to hear all the startups pitching. But one thing for me that really demonstrated the difference in kind of culture is that Trip said, I wanted to be a VC since I was 8 years old. And I think most people in the UK, even now, probably don't know what a VC is, let alone when they were 8. So I think it shows the difference in mentality that's put into people even from such a young age, which is really exciting. I know someone you were really looking forward to seeing was Ron John.
Yeah, we met Ron John Nag down at Stanford in their bioengineering innovation center. He's just a phenomenally an incredible person. So one of his throwaway comments was anyone could build $100 million business just by listening to customers and building what they need. And of course, anyone can say that. Ron John's done it multiple times and then turned from serial founder to then an investor, and has invested in some 100 different companies at a significant scale. He's putting hundreds of thousands into each of these companies. Just the scale that he's working at and the experience that he's able to share as a person. He grew up in the UK, learned his trade here, did his doctorate in computer science. He's a coder at heart, a dev, who then turned that skill into an incredibly successful career. And just for the founders to be able to engage directly with Ron John, hear his insight and his experience, I just think is incredible.
So I think the mindset and the cultural differences is something that's really key, and it's quite hard to explain it. Like, you really do need to see it. But the difference that I saw in the founders, like even from the flight out to the flight back, was really interesting, because I think they've been at the university working here where it can be a bit risk averse, and you sort of think, okay, I could do this. And then they came back thinking, no, I could do this, but I could do this, which is like 10 times bigger, better, more exciting. Maybe I could go quicker, because I think there's that mentality over there that you do these things. I have a couple of founders in mind particularly that I think had actually said, they weren't sure if they wanted to come on the trip. They weren't sure if it was the right time. And I think for them, they really got the most out of it, because it was an opportunity for them to see what is possible, and hopefully made them really excited about what they can achieve in the future.
It wasn't just that you'd visited the lounge before the flight on the way home, and so that's why everything looked a bit different.
That might have contributed to my enjoyment of the flight home more. But I think there generally was, although everyone was really, really tired, I think there was like a bit of a buzz of excitement coming back. And I'm hoping that lasts a little bit longer, towards demo day, and the startups can feel the excitement staying for a little bit longer.
And you just loved that, last video in San Francisco airport before coming back. Just the energy was just, sky high, wasn't it?
So I was tired by the end of the week, so hopefully no one noticed how tired I was in the video. I think, some of the reality of capturing all this content is it can take a bit of a toll, and I think that's maybe something that the founders aren't used to, being filmed, being photographed all the time. So that's also quite different, I think, and over there perhaps you have to get a bit more used to that type of thing. So I think it's a good learning experience in those senses as well, to learn to talk confidently about your startup and to actually just feel confident in yourself that it's okay to have your face on the camera all the time.
And it's a challenge, isn't it? Because it's only a week. So we fly out there, it's 8 hours time difference. Let's say your body clock's all over the place, and you just have to so quickly change gear into then early start, late finish, on the go the whole time, and context switching between you're talking to a founder of a startup, you're talking to an investor who's talking a language that is so different to what we're used to then going and meeting other people and just absorbing all of this information and cultural difference. And then it's day after day, and bang, 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 bang. So by the end of the week, we're all just absolutely exhausted, aren't we? So this mix of excitement and exhaustion.
I think partly it's that sometimes you might meet somebody somewhere and you don't even know who they are. And they might look like, a nobody, but they could be, partner of a VC or a startup founder. And I think you kind of have to treat everyone there, with a little bit of always talk about your startup really confidently, always be selling yourself, because you don't know who you're talking to, and there's such a high density of important individuals out there.
Yeah, to me, I've always thought that's kind of central to one of the things that makes Silicon Valley so different is I suspect loads of people in the environment have met this young first-time founder talking about something that just sounds ridiculous, and they've maybe written them off and thought, oh, they're useless. And then a few years later, they're on the cover of Forbes, they're a billionaire, they've had this incredible exit. Just turned out that silly idea was Airbnb or something. And once you've had that experience a few times, I think it builds this mindset that, don't write anyone off. It may seem stupid. And you hear some investors saying, the best ideas have got to sound stupid, because if it doesn't sound stupid, then you're just doing something conventional. But it then means that no one wants to write anyone off, because you don't know where they might go, or you don't know what they've done. And that definitely drives a different behavior. And because of the density, as you say, everyone's just, where could this go? Where could it lead? I mean, what was your experience of some of the people you met that then surprised you with kind of what they came out with?
I think something I find quite surprising is a lot of the people that have moved out from the UK, because I do think the cultural, like, it is quite different, the culture out there. And I think it's where people have, they go out and they just don't come back. And I think that says a lot about the ecosystem and the network out there. And you can kind of go out with nothing. And if you know a few people and they'll introduce you to some friends, and you can actually build your network and you can build that ecosystem out there quite quickly, I think, compared to the UK, where I think that would be very difficult. Because as you say, people won't write people off as easily, and they'll give you a chance even though you have nothing, and you just turn up at the airport. Whereas here, you just don't get that at all, I think, that willing to take a risk on somebody. So it's obviously a bit daring to just get on a plane and fly to the other side of the world. But I think that is just something that people have done, and it's worked quite well for them.
And people talked about the California yes, didn't they? That it's like, be careful of the California yes. Everyone's going to say yes. It doesn't necessarily mean they're really bought into the thing. They're saying yes. And that kind of cuts both ways, doesn't it? It's kind of positive and a challenge.
Yeah, I think we did see a little bit of that, where if you meet somebody and you say, oh, would you like to, come to our networking event or connect to meet the founders? And everyone's like, yes, yes, yes. But then you don't hear from them again. And so there is an element of meeting people and kind of trying to judge, your relationship with them. And as you're building relationships, I think it is a little bit difficult. It's faster paced, which can be great. But then I think, traditionally, and very British people can be like quite reserved and take a lot of time to trust somebody. And so it's quite like parallels in that sense. So I think you have to be wary of people, being your best friend straight away. But I also think it's kind of a much nicer environment where people are generally much more friendly and welcoming, at face value, and you can feel part of a community quite quickly and integrate in, which I think is positive. I think the other thing was shallow Alto. And these are all said by people that live there, so they know what it's like. But again, I think it's that idea of the sort of surface level, because nobody wants to say anything like mean or dismissive. So they wouldn't say that they didn't want to meet up with you. They'll just say yes, but then like never reply to you ever again. So it's a slight difference that you have to maybe get used to. And
maybe for kind of reserved Brits, it's like, okay, they've said yes, so I'm sure they're going to respond. But it's an invitation to hustle maybe, and that actually there people are expecting you to follow up. If you really want to meet, you're gonna chase it. You're gonna follow up, and perhaps we can tend to hold back and be too reserved and not really chase the kind of the goal that we're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's that attitude that you think if somebody's interested in you, like they'll email you. It's like, well, they're busy, so maybe you're gonna have to contact them, and maybe contact them a few times and be persistent. I think here people might see that as you're being like annoying, whereas there I think it's just showing your grit, and you're like, I'm not going to be pushed back just because you haven't replied to my last 47 emails. I'm still going strong. And it is that sort of get up and determination to just not give up.
Yeah. And I remember, years ago when one of the startups, Magic, in fact, with his co-founder Mauro and Shemek, they were knocked back initially. They wanted to get to Silicon Valley. The accelerator they'd applied to told them, no, they haven't got in. And they just said, no, you've got it wrong. That's the wrong decision. You need us for these reasons. And eventually, back and forth, they managed to convince them to take them. And that was then the start of this incredible journey. And Magic now sharing his journey of raising $60 million Series B funding for Prophecy.io that he's now co-founded. It's amazing the difference that can make, isn't it?
I think it's really good Magic was a great example. Like, he was lovely. He was so like just normal, down to earth person. And I think for the founders to see that he started where they were, and it means, that journey is totally possible for you. He has, he doesn't have any other things that you don't have. You've got these skills, you've got the determination. That's all you need, and you can definitely make it happen. Yeah,
it normalizes it, doesn't it? That actually I've met this person who's done that. They've shared this, and they have a belief that I can do it because they've done it. Yeah. And they're seeing me as a peer and equal. That kind of belief and confidence is so important as a foundation. If there was one cultural difference that really struck out to me, it was this comparison between VCs in the Valley versus what we're perhaps used to, VCs across Europe. And I heard it expressed by Dan Glazer at Wilson Sonsini saying, in Europe often VC is seen as an asset class. So investors are looking to de-risk it. It's kind of managed in a similar process, manage the downside. Whereas in the Valley, it's a winner takes all game, and they are throwing money, chasing the big winners. And what what that means is they're taking enormous risks, expecting, the vast majority to fail, but then the ones that succeed, they've got to succeed on an epic scale. The whole model doesn't work unless the successes become enormous. So it drives this hugely kind of aggressive, ambitious kind of, we've got to scale, hyperscale as quickly as we can. And that drives so much of the behavior around the ecosystem. What about for you?
I think my one big take home is, everyone always says it's who you know, not what you know, but I think that couldn't be more true there. And you have to just take any opportunity you can to go to an event, to meet people. I think here we might turn our noses up at things and think, oh, there won't be anyone important or useful for me there, but actually you just don't know. And using any of these experiences as an opportunity to practice talking about yourself, getting more confident is just, everyone should be doing that all the time, because you never know who you're going to meet at something, and you have to be a little bit more open-minded to putting yourself out there, because that's, the currency in Silicon Valley is literally network. It's who can you introduce people to. And so that is just an enormous thing you're going to have to get good at. And so I think it's never too early to start being good at that.
Yeah.
So I hope you found that really insightful. And if you've been seeing our journey on LinkedIn, that will hopefully give you a little bit of an idea of why we go out to Silicon Valley with our cohort. If you would like to be a founder on our trip next year, please do get in touch with us and look out for our cohort 25 recruitment coming soon. If you're out in Silicon Valley and you think we should be meeting with you next year, then please do get in touch. We would love to hear from you.